Hello everyone, today I'm bringing you a video talking about this, and this is an example of the British Army's 1947 pattern battle dress, the blouse from that battle dress suit. And the 1947 pattern itself is part of the rapid changes in battle dress design which took place during the immediate post-war years, the late 1940s. Initial post-war production was basically wartime utility battle dress. That was then replaced by the 1946 pattern. Then you get the 1947 pattern, and finally the 1949 pattern, which is probably familiar to most of my viewers. It's the very common post-war battle dress you find, obviously made in huge numbers for the national servicemen serving at that time. The 1947 pattern differs primarily in the design of the lapels, as you can see here. Otherwise, it's bringing in the features which would then be seen in the 1949 pattern design, designed primarily to be worn with an open collar. And this resulted from pressures on the British Army to allow other ranks to wear a shirt and tie as standard with the uniform. In the Royal Navy, ratings class 1 and 3, that is to say all ratings not dressed as seamen, not wearing square rig, wore a shirt and tie with their uniform, and the same was true in the RAF and had been since just before the Second World War. So there was pressure for the British Army to basically account for this and allow other ranks to wear a shirt and tie as standard with the uniform, and hence the changes in design of battle dress to accommodate this. The blouse itself, as I say, is badged to a captain in the Royal Army Medical Corps. Nevertheless, we'll look at this in general, some of the features and so forth, not just the insignia. I will turn it inside out so we can see the internal lining and the labels and so forth as well. Talking about this in more detail, you can see here the design of the collar is really what marks out the 1947 pattern. It's not the notched lapels and collar of the 1949 pattern battle dress. It harkens back to a design which could be worn closed. You do have a buttonhole here, of course, and there is a button underneath the lapel on this side as well. Hopefully you can see that there. And when buttoned up, this looks more like a closed collar battle dress. So obviously with the 1949 pattern, you basically end up with a small standing collar. This has more of a stand and fall collar when the collar is fully buttoned up. So it harkens back to the earlier designs in that regard, although it is really designed to be worn open most of the time. Concealed buttons down the front here, there are 4 down the front to the waistband, and then there's actually a 5th button on the waistband itself, which we'll see in just a minute. And we have the pockets here on the front of the blouse, basically carried across from the preceding 1946 pattern. They're pleated with exposed buttons on the flaps, as you can see here, and this would be carried across to the 1949 pattern as well. This element of the design would be carried across. The main difference between this, and the main visual difference between this and the 1949 pattern, is the change to the collar. At the waist, in addition to the button securing this at the centre here, we do of course have the buckle round to the side there, just to the front of the right hip, and obviously this then blouses over the waistband, hence battle dress blouse as opposed to a jacket or anything else. It is intended that the upper part of the garment blouses over the waistband where it's drawn in at the waist. Moving on to look at the right hand side of the blouse here, we can first of all see the insignia up on the shoulder. Right up in the shoulder seam here we have the shoulder title, RAMC, Royal Army Medical Corps, and the rank worn on the epaulette here. Now interestingly, I'm going to refer to these as pips using the slang term, so please forgive that. We have the coloured backed pips here in the same colour as the shoulder title, and there's actually a difference between this initial pip here. The first pip is heavily padded and the other 2 up here aren't as heavily padded. On the other side, all the pips are the same. I can find no evidence that this has been messed around with, that they've been removed and changed. So we just have a mismatched set of pips on this uniform, which is quite interesting. Still display the rank perfectly well, and it makes no odds to the army, of course, but you would think you'd see a matched set of pips, and you don't in this instance. Obviously, its insignia is insignia, and it's supposed to show your rank, and it does so perfectly well. So there's no real problem with that, of course. It's just an interesting feature to note on this, that these 2 pips here differ from the others, and as I say, I can see no evidence that these have been removed or replaced at any time. That just seems to be how the rank was applied. Looking at the arm here, you can see the characteristic forward sweep of the arm. Typical of battle dress, the arm is slightly curved forward. This is of course originally intended to allow the wearer more freedom of movement when leaning forward and taking aim with a rifle. That's a feature of the design, one that was carried right the way through to 1949 pattern. Simple design of cuff here with a single button. You can see how that's drawn in. We've got a pleat there and then pleats at the rear here where the sleeve has been drawn into the cuff band, lined of course with drill material, which we'll see when we turn this inside out. And if I just lift the arm out of the way here, you can see how the tail end of the waistband strap here passing through the buckle is then secured under this little loop of cloth sewn onto the waistband there. Looking at the back of the blouse here, you can see the single centerline seam running down the back there. You can see how this blouses over the waistband at the back here, and on the waistband itself we have two buttonholes, one here and one around on the other hip there, which of course allow the blouse to be buttoned onto the trousers using the corresponding buttons on the waistband of the trousers. This is a feature of Battledress that would carry right the way through the 1947 pattern to the 1949 pattern. You can button the blouse onto the trousers. And finally, looking at the left hand side, there's not much more to see here. Just to mention, we do have a matched set of pips on this side, so you have 3 of the more heavily padded pips used on this epaulette to display the rank up there. One final thing I'll mention before turning this inside out, I'll show you in more detail, I have already mentioned it, is the button on the waistband here. So in addition to having the buckle around there to secure the waistband, you do have this concealed button which fixes through this buttonhole, the piece of drill sewn into the waistband there, as you can see. Moving on to look at the internal details of this. Turn the collar up here, you can see details of the construction of the collar there. You can see details of the seams and so forth running around here. The darts worked in at the top here above the pockets, and then you have the bags for the chest pockets here, as you can see, and we also have an internal breast pocket on this side there, as you can see. We have the buttonholes for the concealed buttons in a piece of drill, worked into a piece of drill down the front here. The top one is actually worked into the serge here, and then you have this drill lining piece here into which the buttonholes are worked, and you can see we have 4 buttons down the center here, and then the buttonhole for that 5th button on the waistband down there. This is a size 11, which is stamped in with an ink stamp here. We also have the label here, which we'll have a look at in more detail now. We'll get a close-up of this. The label reads Battledress Blouse 1947 pattern, and we have the size number 11, height 5'9" to 5'10", breast 38 inches to 39 inches, and waist 33 inches to 34 inches. And this was made at the Royal Ordnance Factory, Chorley, not that far from me, and is dated 1949, as you can see here. And we also have the inspection stamp below that, and then off to the right we have the size again stamped, the number 11, directly onto the cotton drill lining material. On the other pocket we do have the remnants of a name and number here, and we'll get a close-up of this as well. And you can see here what appears to be LT Davies, so Lieutenant Davies, and then the number underneath that, which appears to be 4059, possibly 10, and that's just been written in with an ink pen on the pocket lining here. Looking at the right hand side of the internal details here, you can see how the collar attaches on a little bit more clearly there perhaps. Underneath the collar, the serge of the collar here, we have a piece of drill to provide some reinforcement for where the button for the epaulette attaches on there. You can see the shoulder seam here and the seam coming down the shoulder there. Obviously the seams on the arm are front and back, as you can see, and then we have the simple cuff design here, lined in drill, no gusset or anything, just a simple slit cuff closed with a single button there, as you can see. Looking at the internal details of the back here, you can see we have a hanging tab in the collar there, that single seam running down the centre, and then the seam in the lining material of the waistband there, and the pleats where this is gathered in around the waist for blousing over the waistband. Finally, looking at the left hand side here, there isn't really much more to see, but one thing that's a little bit clearer to see on this side is that piece of drill on the shoulder where the button is attached for the epaulette. It isn't covered up as much by the serge of the collar in this instance, and you can see the button is stitched on through that piece of drill to provide some reinforcement for where it attaches. So hopefully you found it interesting looking at this. I hadn't made a video looking at a Battledress uniform for a little bit, and I thought it was about time I did, and pulled this out of the wardrobe, and it's nice to get it out on the mannequin and display it for a bit. I may add a belt and a beret for further display in the front room for a little while. It's nice to have it on the mannequin for a bit of a change. So as I say, I do hope you found it interesting looking at this. If you have and you'd like to see more from the channel, please do consider subscribing if you haven't already. And whether you're newly subscribing or you've previously subscribed, please do make sure you hit the little bell, the notification button down below. That will of course alert you when I upload future videos. If you really like my uploads and you would like to support the channel, you can, both Patreon and PayPal are linked down below. And as ever, a massive thank you to everybody who supports the channel using those two methods. It's greatly appreciated, as I always say. Thank you all very much indeed. If you'd like to follow the channel on social media, you can. Facebook, Instagram and Twitter are all linked down below. And if you'd like to get in touch but you don't really use social media, there is of course an email address in the description as well. That's everything for this video. So until next time, bye for now.